Just call it so. Thunder.
Oh, Steve, I did have.
This is just great stuff.
What's your favorite Bond to eat? Remember that episode
No.
where Dwight Schrute, at that point unknown son, was eating paper. Dwight says, "That's my favorite Bond to eat."
Well, with that said, our call to order. Welcome to our January 26th Downtown Advisory Board meeting. There's some new faces here at the table, and after we have our welcome, our call to order. So let's start with people who are here. Josh Kay, present. Kirk Sun, here. Alan Pollock, here. Charles Weathers, yes. Wanda Robertson, Chrissy Birch, Rory McManus, present. And is it Ryan? It is. Fetchel? Ryan Fechtel. Ryan Fechtel, yep. Present. Oh, yeah. Wanda is here. Welcome. Present. And what? Sarah. I need glasses. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, before we go forward with an approval of the agenda, I'd like to welcome our new members here. And let me start with you, Ryan. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Fechtel. I'm the general manager over at Salem Center Mall. And prior to that, I was at William Town Center for a year and a half. So happy to be here, happy to be downtown. Definitely, I chose to be downtown and be on Salem Center. But I wanted to get it all done. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Ryan. Sarah?
Yes, my name is Sarah No. My husband and I own Chubby Bow House inside 440 Mall. We've been in downtown since 2020. So lots of fun stories from that. But we love downtown. We love what it's done for our business. And we've been able to connect with a lot of people in the downtown community, and we feel very welcome.
Thank you. And thank you both for deciding to join down. Okay. Well, let's move forward to the approval of our agenda for today and ask for a motion to approve it.
Approve the agenda.
Second. 1 second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those not, nay. Motion carries. And we're approved agenda. Moving forward to agenda item 3, the approval of our minutes from our December 15th meeting. I'd like to ask for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Seconds. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our December 15th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those not, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Done with our housekeeping. Moving forward to agenda item number 4, public comment. Any public comment today? Okay. Moving right along. Agenda item number 5, action item. Should DAB direct staff to prepare a communication to City Council regarding DAB's recommendation for implementation of downtown paid parking? Sheree, you want to provide some context there?
Okay, so just a couple of clarification things for new members. So if you weren't at a meeting, then you wouldn't know if the minutes are right or wrong. So typically you would abstain from voting on it, just to help you as a new board member. And for those of you who have been on the board a couple of years, you're probably wondering why this action item is there, especially if you were here at the last meeting where Josh specifically asked me, could we, as a board, send something to council and tell them we want to have them make a motion and move forward with paid parking on the street. And I said what I've been very consistently saying, no, we typically do it with the budget, and until we're asked to kind of take forward paid parking, we're just kind of here silent to it unless council makes a motion. And so now I'm coming back And I apologize for that, I'm really not crazy, but again, we have new mayor, new council. And we had Councilor Stapleton in here before, and she was very supportive of moving forward a motion to move paid parking exploration forward. But again, with the bond and new city manager and new council and new mayor, it just kind of was put on the back burner. So I've been instructed that we can move forward a communication now. And so that's why I put it on the agenda. And the goal would be that I'll get this ready and bring it back to you for the February 9th meeting. And then you can review it and approve it. And then it would go to the council meeting on February 13th. And somebody, the chair or vice chair, could be there to speak to. This has been something we've communicated to you on 2 or 3 times through the budget process. And now we're coming to you kind of in person, because usually in the budget process, board members aren't there. And it probably doesn't get the level of attention that it will as an out of budget communication staff member being there to speak to it. And we'll see if they take and make a motion to have staff move it forward or whatever they want to say. So again, and I apologize, but I was redirected. And so Josh and Charles and I had a meeting so that they would know that they could move it outside of having to have it only just be tied to the budget. So is that
Good.
accurate? Okay.
And Sarah, Ryan, we're a little bit more familiar with the current board members, but do you have any questions about what that means? Or it's a pretty loaded situation?
I would have a lot of questions, but I can listen first. Obviously, my customers and tenants would be affected by that, so I'm curious.
So history-wise, parking, the management of parking is based on when you hit 85% demand for parking. And so for years, the board had a third party do utilization reports. And we hit that threshold starting in 2009. And in 2009, council approved retail parking on the street, but it didn't happen. So we've had, but they did put time restrictions in it was 2 hours at that time. Then there was a parking task force, because at the next meeting, you'll see the budget that supports the parking structures within the parking district. There was a task force of 11 members from the community, and they had several recommendations, including implementing paid parking on the street. And at that time, somebody created an initiative, petition to stop paid parking from being implemented. And so they asked for unlimited free parking, no time limits. The downtown businesses did not realize that, I guess what they signed was unlimited time restrictions. And so they came in front of council and said that they needed time restrictions. And that's when the 3-hour time restrictions through an administrative order were put in place. And that's what we have now. So this particular board wears 2 hats. We're talking today about the Riverfront Downtown Urban Renewal and the funds that it has and the kinds of projects that it supports. Take that hat off. You also wear the hat in regards to the downtown parking district and the budget that relates to maintaining the 3 parking structures. That particular budget, and this particular model of a downtown parking district where the businesses pay a tax to support everything that needs to be done with the parking and economic and promotion in downtown has been broken for years. The parking tax does not generate enough revenue to cover the cost of operating a district, and the parking permit revenue, that's what supports it. It just isn't enough. Costs keep going up, especially with cleaning, with the loss of Nordstrom's and the loss of TJ Maxx and the loss of Penny's. They were probably paying close to 50% of the parking tax in the district. Again, today's meeting's not about that. That's going to be next, but in regards to paid parking, the model that we have is not self-sufficient. The board has had years of looking at the studies, they've had the consultants come in, and if you looked at all of them, it would say you need to go to a paid parking system. You meet the criteria for putting in a paid parking system. Again, we would keep the parkades free if we put a paid parking system in. If we were ever lucky enough to get 85% demand in the parking structure, we would then consider putting paid in the parking structure. Our parking structures are underutilized, but again, at the same time, we still don't have our flower baskets, we don't have the events, we don't have the banners, we don't have money to support a downtown association with the parking fund model that we have. So each year during the budget process and the board looks at what the parking fund looks like, they keep saying it's broken and we need to explore an option other than the model that we have. Being the second largest city, I think a lot of the people that visit here think we have paid parking. They look through the pay stations, I run into them myself and I'm like, free, but there is no such thing as free. Somebody has to pay for it. So again, at the last board meeting, the board members wanted to take a communication board. I said, no, let's just do it in the budget. And I'm coming back today saying we can do it outside of the budget.
Does on-street paid parking replace or change the downtown business tax parking?
Again, I'm assuming if in fact council directs staff to move forward with that, I don't think paid parking would work unless the parking district was closed and the business is no longer paid. Myself, I personally would not want it to be implemented without the parking tax going away. That's just what's always been said to the downtown businesses. Now, if you just think about it for a second, it can't go away immediately because you don't have the revenue from the pay stations. So you would have to keep the district employees a year or two until you knew what you were going to have to operate it. But absolutely, it should go away. I mean, the benefits of the paid system are we would have money to support things we have not been able to support, the level of cleaning, that. I mean, we haven't had any of that for years. Plus, those high demand spaces, the users would pay for it, not the businesses. If you have to have that space out there, then you're going to pay for it. You're an employee, who I don't understand why you would take an on-street space when your business is paying for those to be free for your customer. Go for it. And you're going to pay for that privilege. Otherwise, you'll get a permit. The parking garages will finally get full. We won't have some of the issues that we've had with crime because there'll be more people going in and out of there. It's just a different parking model that we just don't have here, but it's a better model if you're into parking management strategies. So, and Charles, and don't ask me, please, if we would have 5 or 10 minutes free, if we're going to have an app that you can extend the hours. Because Charles has asked me all those questions, and we're not there. I mean, that would certainly be part of the discussion for implementation, but we're just looking at right now. We look at it, can we get support for that? Switching out the model.
I just have a question regarding the parkades. Has there ever been an effort to make them more appealing? They can typically blend into all the other great buildings down there. Obviously safety is an issue with parking there myself, but has there ever been a thought of people are out there looking for signs, looking for indication as to where to go, where to park. Local businesses can take that on where I feel like they get lost in there a little bit. And you mentioned that the parkades are not being used effectively. Has there ever been an attempt to just make them more welcoming and just informing people that they're actually out there and available for them to use, especially if you're doing it free? So the signage was all burgundy and gold, probably before you were down here. We had burgundy and gold signage for the lighted ones and for any sign that directed you to parking was burgundy and gold.
and there were burgundy and gold banners. It was before my time, but that's what was up. So this particular board, not this group, but a board, we hear lots about the parking garages, the visibility of the parking garages. So we went and put in all the blue and white. So all the parking signs were switched out to the blue and white with the P. The other ones had words like Chemeketa parking garage. So and most people are used to seeing a P. So we switched all that out, added more signs, came up with some marketing tools for it too. And therefore, while Ross was putting it in the paper, changed out the lighting. So we have LED a lot brighter. Every so many years, the insides of the elevators and stuff, get revamped. But I don't think that anybody would disagree with it. Would be fun. And we've looked at, we've applied for grants, staff to try to get art or something in on the walls. We haven't been successful with that, but there's no money. And again, I don't want to take away from Michael being here to talk about Riverfront, but any of that stuff we can talk about if in fact we have a way, unless we can get a grant outside, because when you see the budget, you'll see it will become clear to you the struggles that the current model has. But no, there isn't anything that says that we couldn't do something more. And I think everybody would like to have more. Unfortunately, right now, we're barely able to pay for keeping the stairwells clean and the increased amount of trash, the damage from the fires that are in the stairwells and all over the place. There's just the basic stuff, and then we'll just build that wish list together. But I think that's why some of the board members who've been here a while, it's very disappointing and frustrating to not be able to answer the question you asked in a way other than what I am. It's very disappointing to me personally, but it's not impossible, but not with the model that we do.
No, well said.
I feel
No, I appreciate the transparency.
and just know, I know I outreach to both of you. I'm happy to meet with you anytime to answer any questions that you have, because you are stepping into, it's a good time to be here because we're talking about the budget and you're going to get information you're not going to get in any other board meeting. So it gives you that kind of groundwork to know why we're moving forward. If you came in like May, we would just be moving forward what is going to be discussed now. So I'm glad that you are here, but just know if you have any questions, either me and Shelley in the near future will be me. And so, between us, you can certainly get to either one of us and if we don't know it, we'll try to get it.
I'm really glad that we have a meeting before we send that up to council. So it'd be good to know exactly what the white paper looks like that we send up. Do you think there is any way for a rough estimation or a timeline? Or is it really challenging not knowing how council's gonna intake the data, the recommendations?
So just know that we've been ready for ever since the board has wanted to change. We have a very detailed schedule map out of how long it would take. It takes 6 months to just get a pay station right now, because they come from Sweden. So we've had to map it all out. And obviously just changing the SRCs. And the first thing that would happen here is that if we wanted to fund it with Riverfront, I have to do a plan amendment because it's not in the plan. So just so everybody knows, if it's not in our plan, our renewal plan, you can't fund it. So if we want to do something that's not in the plan, then I have to do a plan amendment. Not that difficult, but this equipment is not in paying for capital costs in the parking structure is in the plan, but not the new equipment or pay parking on street. So that would be one of the first things. And then we have to change all the codes so that return to the block twice is gone. And I know everybody loves that. there's just some of those parking, things that are out there that will go away. So we would have SRCs. So, but yes, Josh, we have all that. Because we have to keep updating it because things change. But yeah, I think we will bring in a very detailed, schedule and tasks. If we get the nod to move it forward. And part of that would be a communication strategy also. We would want, that would be very important.
That helps all our volunteer to go to sleep.
Is that in our budget?
Yeah.
Thank you Sue, for that offer. Thank you.
Someone gets there.
Yes.
Hey, Dad, if you want to- Well, you meant.
Real quick, sorry, on what you're gonna be preparing. That February 20th. Is it possible to see a rough draft via email ahead of time? I remember last time we did it, we kind of did it all over email. But there are a couple of back and forths on say this instead, or what is this really meaning? So I'm wondering if we could do some of that, so on the 9th, we're not giving you a bunch of stuff to change and then we're scrambling.
Good question. I can, what you can't do is any type of action.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, unless it's in our meeting.
Right.
So I can't say, okay, you all like this, let's all vote on it and I'm moving forward.
Right.
Cannot do that in email. But I don't see why I can't send you out a draft. If that's what it is.
We're submitted before tonight instead of them having to look.
Right, because what I'd be afraid of is if we have a lot of stuff we're wanting to change something. But it puts you under pressure on the back end of that February 9th, that maybe we missed the February 13th council. Yeah,
I'm happy.
so,
I am your eager pleasure, so whatever you guys need, as long as it's within the rules. Our rules and the city policy on what actions, the number of us that get together and talk about something, we're good. And I'm fine.
I think it'd be helpful, and especially for the new people too, to see something ahead of time. Yeah, that,
I will, they all need to go.
on-site work.
Actions.
I'm sure we can probably.
Well, you mentioned wish list. I know there's so many stakeholders that it touches and impacts, whether you're the business, you're the landlord, you're the property owner. It's hard to even think about encapsulating all that input. I know so much of that is going to be a heavy lift for staff. I know we can only submit what we can, but it would be nice to incorporate, like Sarah, you're saying, even the aesthetic components. There's the capital improvements and maintenance, but also because that has been legitimate, consistent feedback that we've received from Main Street too, of their desire to improve the aesthetic and function flow, whether that's through branding or whatnot. But you see across the street, the demolition of UGN, you just see how massive Chemeketa Parkade is. I mean, it's so glaringly stretching and kind of horrendously colored. So it'd be nice to see if there's even an opportunity for that, if there's a pro forma that comes up with Peak Parking. Just knowing that the amphitheater's activated now for hopefully what's going to be an awesome summer of events and 5,000 people capacity. I'm assuming that the revenue is going to be great. And ideally that revenue is going to go to help downtown, not just cleanliness and security, but also in the businesses too, to experience a more friendly experience for retailers and customers. But I'm glad you said it, because that's part of it too. I know we could talk about this for 8 hours, but is there anything else, considering it sounds like we're gonna do some email exchanges? Is there anything else for the good of the order? It's gonna be drafted. Well, all that said, I would like to ask, thank you, for a motion to direct staff to the communication.
I move with the DAB direct staff for communication to the council regarding the DAB's recommendation.
Thank you, Kirk. Okay, all those in favor of DAB directing staff to prepare a communication to city council regarding DAB's recommendation for implementation of downtown paid parking, say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Exciting.
Yes,
I know.
for more than 20 years. No, it's not.
Well, we look forward to seeing that in the email, and Kirk, I'm glad you mentioned that too. There's a lot to make sure that's represented in that memo, however, what form it takes, so. And Sherry, thank you. Okay, moving forward to agenda item number 6, information reports. It's an exciting time of year where we're gonna go over the urban renewal area budget, so without further ado, let's open up the sheet to discussion of our 2023-24 Riverfront Downtown Urban Renewal budget.
I sent it separate from that half of the video.
That's fine. So,
You know, do that. We'll get you a copy. Anybody else?
I
Because
printed it really small.
Ryan, are you gonna be that high maintenance? Because Charles, you can pause for it.
I'm gonna put it on the screen here.
Okay, can you make sure it's
Big.
huge
Yeah.
for Ryan?
Thank you.
And, yeah, if I'll get you your.
Right.
Sarah, just know, I'm already gonna be making them closer to me, so the guys.
Yeah.
Because now I moved Charles away from Josh, but now I need to move these two, so, yeah, then we'll be closer.
Gotta watch your legs.
Before we, now we have to take our downtown parking hat off and put on the URA hat back on again. But before we get deep into this and talk about all the exciting projects, et cetera. Does everyone kind of know how URA and tax increment financing works? And how we get
I'm
resources?
just gonna say no.
You're just gonna say no. Sheree, do you want to do this piece or do you?
Should we keep it to it? I need to. Oh, okay, okay. I'm on again, okay, so when you have an area that is, it's a definition of blight.
Do you know how?
You create an urban renewal area, and to do that, you have to create an urban renewal plan, and you have to talk about the objectives and the goals. And then you state in the plan how much you're going to have in indebtedness. And then you freeze the tax base. Let's say the tax base is 100,000. And anything over and above that that's generated from taxes increasing is called tax increment. And then that's what we can use in the project. And so that's a super simple way of saying the tax base gets frozen. If a new project is built and it increases the tax revenue in the area, then that difference is what we can have for tax increment. So something like Ravenwood, the new apartments, that will generate tax increment. Because it would have just been raw land, and now it's going to have a $18 million project on it. When we do rehabs of buildings, not so much, because you're not going from bare land. So just for us as a group, we get more bang for the buck, more tax increment when it's new construction. Not that we don't want the preservation of the historic buildings and we want those repurposed and we want to see them full again, but just technically we get more when new construction of their land. So if it moves forward with something, more money, pennies, not the same. Just because it's already there. They're
I'll
already
take the up on it.
That's not gonna happen, but yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question. I'm not a tax assessor. I don't know if they added another 4 on it. I guess it would be more square footage, so they would pay more, but in general. And so tax increment is what we use to fund the projects. The other thing is that this is where you'll get a gold star in the future. Let's see if we all remember. What can it be spent on? What kind of projects? Capital. So when somebody says, I really wish we could come up with a grant program where we could help businesses with their rent. I really wish that we could do maintenance kind of projects. Are those eligible? No. No, and that's hard. So the parking fund, it could do those. Not subsidized rent, but it can pay for maintenance and repairs where the urban renewal dollars cannot. So we want to contribute. Paid parking, paid machines, perfect example. I can buy those pay stations, but can I use urban renewal money to operate them?
No.
Cannot. Every time somebody says, can we have a trolley? Might be able to buy the trolley, but I can't run the trolley system. Now, because that trolley thing comes up. How many times? In the time that I've been here, it just keeps circling itself around. So that's the other thing you need to remember is that it can only be used for capital, not for maintenance or repairs.
We kind of obligated to add one piece to that. That increments, that comes to us for projects is in lieu of it going to the appropriate
Yes,
taxing.
that's the politics of it. That's why it's controversial. Some communities don't have it because it would take away from the school district or it would take away from somebody else. However, if you look at the overall benefits that come out of it over the years, I think that it would outweigh, but again, it is controversial.
As one of those.
Okay, don't need me then.
Introduce-
Michael Brown, I'm the financial services manager here for urban development. And this is my second budget cycle with the city. I moved here from Pennsylvania, so I've had a lot to learn about not only the department, but about Oregon. So I forget who said something about Oregon assessments and property taxes. I've had it explained to me 6 times and I still don't fully grasp it. So it's been quite the reason I asked for just kind of a sense of what people knew about tax increment is because I wanted to talk in a big picture about is that bar at the top there, is that?
We
Get
can
rid of
take it
that?
down, yeah, go to more. It should allow you to minimize it. You can move it down.
There we go, there we go.
You can move us up.
So Sheree was just talking about the excess value, and I just threw together a slide this morning that talked about how excess value has grown over the last 5 years and projected up to 2024. That 2024 projection does not include any of the big projects that will be coming to fruition soon. So for instance, the hotel down the street is right now assessed at about, I don't know, $7 million, I think. That will be much more than that when they finally do their completion and get their certificate of occupancy. The
Ravenwood.
so that's called Ravenwood is now right now is assessed at $2 million. So obviously when that finishes, that assessment will go up as well. So the flaw in this is all I did was take the average from previous years to kind of show what fiscal year 24 is going to look like. So this is the okay. There we go. That's the tax increment collected, again, going back to 2020 and then projected up to 2024. So that's kind of the annual revenue that we have to work with. And this revenue comes into what's called the debt fund, Fund 220. And Fund 220 pays for both long-term debt and then the annual debt that we take on in order to move that money into where you all can spend it. And there's a thing called maximum indebtedness. And when the plan is created, there is a maximum amount of debt that can be incurred. And this plan was created in 1998, I think, it's the original.
Put that in my memo, 1975.
1975. Well, so Then I think it was renewed, or there was a change in 1998 because of my max indebtedness chart. Got it. Anyway, point is this. At the end of fiscal year 24, there will be about $165 million left that the URA can incur in debt. We're going to make two final payments in fiscal year 24, the 2009 and the 2020 B bonds, which means that we'll be not putting out $820,000 a year in debt service to that. However, the 2020 A bonds are going to jump up to replace those out to 2031. So we're going to be spending about $1 million a year servicing that. So if you take the remaining the amount of indebtedness that the URA is allowed to incur, and you assume an average of $8 million a year out to 2031 when those other bonds get retired. And then after that, you think that we can do about $11 million a year. That means that we reach max indebtedness 2040, 2041. I'll be dead then, so it's all on you.
So in 2042, what does that mean?
Close.
It's closed. URA is closed, and then in theory, all of this activity has produced much higher assessed values. And then with the closing, that means that all the taxing jurisdictions that have foregone all this revenue for all that time will then get that revenue flowing back to you. So that's kind of the big picture theory of how this works. Okay, so I need to pull up the actual. Is that big enough, or do I need to make that bigger? Is that big enough? Everybody can see that?
Working for me.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we just talked about Fund 220, which is where all the tax increment comes into, and the way we get that money from Fund 220 into Fund 265 is by doing those annual borrowings that put that money into, see the short-term bond proceeds line 51 right there. That's how we get money from the tax increment into the construction fund so that it can be spent. So this top piece here are all the resources. Here was your fiscal year 23 budget. And here's what the estimates are that it's going to end up being at the end of this year, June 30th. And then here is what we're kind of estimating for fiscal year 24, not huge differences there. So let's go down to the expenditure pieces. So those first lines, I wish I had a laser pointer instead of this twitchy mouse. Do we have one, Michelle? Oh, so this line 66 and 69 are basically what we spend for staff costs and for what's called
That's not my salary.
yeah. Oh, okay. So that top line there, line 68. Oh, thanks, Shelley.
And it's kind of working too, so don't be impressed.
Just push the red button.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to hold it in here.
Maybe I do not have mastery of this.
Not one word.
I can see it.
Can?
You cannot, they can try.
You know what?
Yes, I'm working on the screen.
Okay, fair enough. I can see the reflection.
All right, well, let's not belabor this then. So anyway, these two lines right here. Go up here and freeze panes real quick, if I may, so that. Did that do it? No, it didn't. All right. So these top lines right here are the project coordination support, which is what staff and engineering from the city and that kind of thing go towards working on all these different projects. The indirect cost allocation plan that you see there, which is line 69, is the URA's contribution to the city's operations as a whole, legal, IT, human resources, and that type of thing. Then you get into the individual programs with respect to, let's talk about 77 and 78, which is the conference center. The Salem Convention Center is a URA asset, and as such, the URA pays for the liability insurance, and it also pays the operator to run the marketing. And then the marketing is reimbursed back to URA from the TOT taxes that are city gains.
You may not know what that is.
I don't know what TOT is.
Transit occupancy
Transit
tax,
occupancy
when you
tax.
go and stay in a hotel. You have all those lodging taxes and stuff that you pay, the city collects them, and that's what the transit occupancy tax is. There's a board that oversees that. In fact, they just had an application cycle where you can, if you want to do an event or something like that, you can apply. So, yeah, and then that might be something, Shelley, you might have, Chris Snyder, come in sometime to talk about that. Not a bad idea.
Mike, would you like us to ask questions as we go, or you want to kind of wait till the end after you explain everything? What's
no,
easiest for you?
I'm here to serve. So if you've got a question, shoot it at me.
I was just curious on the project coordination support. So
Yeah.
Actual 22 was 476, but then you're budgeting out almost double that for 24. What's the,
Why?
how is that tied, or what's that tied to?
How's that done?
Yeah.
How it's had a huge conversation with the finance office about this yesterday. Basically, that's tied to a couple things. But the biggest piece of it is all of the UD overhead. So for instance, the director, me, our management analyst, the accounting assistant, portion of Cherie, all of those costs are split over all the 32 cost centers that belong to UD. And they're then apportioned by how much time we think folks are going to be spending in that particular cost center. Now, I will tell you that this is a conversation I was having with the finance office yesterday, is traditionally the amount that we budget is way more than the amount that we actually end up spending. And so this summer, I'm going to be looking at revamping the model that we've been using to estimate those so that they're a little bit closer. But that's essentially what it is because the model is built the way it is.
You mentioned the conference center marketing funds.
Yeah.
Are reimbursed by COP.
Yes.
Is that reimbursed at 100%?
Yes. So year-end estimate here, 419,170 is what we have forecast, or what Chris Meyer has forecasted that we're going to get for fiscal year 22. And then the 477 for next year is what he's forecasting for fiscal year 24. Okay. So that kind of takes care of the overhead things. Then you have your actual projects here for your capital grant program and all of your other projects. I don't know if you want me to go through each of these. I don't know them all in the kind of detail that you might be seeking, but these are the year-end estimates. The UGM site, we think we're going to be a little over $1 million by the time it's all said and done. Because it seems like every other day we get a change order because we found something else. Never happens, right? But we do think that it's going to be done by June 30th of this year, and so we reserved $500,000 to basically work on some of the redevelopment things for the upcoming years. It's just a guess. Continuing on down, there's some new projects that are being proposed. Line 112, the Union Street Northeast Upward Bike Lane. Line 115, capital improvements to Marion Parkade, which Sheree can certainly speak more to than I can.
So, sorry, Michael, on those,
Yeah.
I mean, are those? I've never heard of either one of those projects, those things that are,
So in your memo, anything that was new, I talked to you about it. And when the council had their discussions on the projects that were going to be in bond, as part of bond, they came up with the idea that if there was a project that was on their list, but there was another funding source for it, it would be pulled out of the bond and the other funding source would take care of it. So we have, as a board, funded the signal to get the bikes and pedestrians across Commercial Street. It's part of the Union Street, as I shared, bike project that goes out to 12th. And so we have $1.5 million when he hits that line item. There's $1.5 million to do improvements for pedestrians and bikes. That has not started yet. Michael comes in here every quarter and gives us an update on it. It's supposed to start this summer and get completed. So that continues it on. And so the only piece of that project that they don't have funding for was this post on there. By the Union Street Bridge, they're going to put in a buffer for bikes. And the ramp, and deal with ADA. So restriping,
which one is this one? This is the buffer. bike
this
lane,
is
or
Union
this
Street buffered bike lane. It's part of,
This is the 900,000.
yes, we already have one. We've had it for 5 years, so we keep carrying over $1.5 million. You look at the big budget. This was a new one that came out of the projects that had been identified for bond, but because it was in an urban rural area, it was pulled out and directed to the sport. And I'm sure Mr. Stapleton was here, but she's passionate about the bike and pedestrian and all infrastructure for that. She would be able to speak probably better than I can, but it is a priority for that whole bike Union Street bike friendly pedestrian bikeway improvements to get you from Wallace over the historic bridge over to 12th. Everybody get to see it. Again, I just got this. So that's what that one is.
So continuing down the list, of your new, here's line 115. This is Marion Parkade capital improvements. There was a big assessment that you all approved last year that was just been finished, and Sheree has the details on that certainly, but we put $1 million in to basically address things that were found there.
Is that all structural?
This is a tough one for me. And you know, I think I already asked you guys to not forget that Marion Parkade needs to contribute in a way other than it does now. We have all this investment going in around it, and it needs to be different, needs to contribute in a different way. And that's just not addressing the homeless and the challenges and the consequence of the homeless around it and in it. It needs to have something else happen to it through lighting, through a redesign, through something, because that's where you're going to go in the future. We're built out in downtown. You know, in 50 years, you'll have this really cool downtown historic district but then going north and hoping that you have something more like Cruise Way or a mix of uses or the Pearl. Because that's where the opportunity, or along the water, that's where your opportunities are gonna be. And Marion Parquet is going to be strategic to support that going forward. So, yes, last year we put money in the budget because would I have had money in the parking fund budget? No, no. So I had to come back to Riverfront and we had a conversation about there's huge impacts to that parking structure because of the challenges that we all know. And now it's just a matter of what all does that mean? So an engineer went and they took a look at the stairwells and they took a look at the glass by the stairwells and they took a look at all the structural issues. Because the constant power washing, the constant urination, believe me, it's all taking its toll on Mary. And so, no, the assessment, it's like $1.5 million to $2 million just for the curtain wall that they think needs to be done, and another 900,000 for the glass removal. So I'm just going to tell you what my thoughts are, but you know I have no authority to move forward what I think should be done. But I am going to just put it out there with you because I want you to know what I think as a person who's been working on this. And I've already talked to Kristen about it. I truly believe that if I have $2 million to deal with a curtain wall and another 900,000, I'm putting kind of lipstick on the pig type of thing. And so I'm already pushing the conversation that if we're going to do something, we need to do something more than just fix what is there versus doing something to have it be different and better. Even looking at, it can go up. It was built to have layers on it. Let's look at everything that we could possibly do. And I'm going back to Aaron in my head. What are all the benefits? Maybe we could do housing on the top of that. And that would address a lot of things too. Now you have people there, you have a completely different look and feel. In prior years, we paid to put water infrastructure in because of the pit site, because there wasn't enough water in the urban rural area to support high density housing there or on Marion Parquet. So we've already over the years taken a look at that area being where we're going to go north. I'd like to put the infrastructure in if an opportunity ever came up. So I am not right personally in favor of putting money out for replacement of seating, but I am very supportive of when we continue the analysis and look at potentially some improvements other than just fixing what's there to make it better and have it contribute in a different way. Obviously, facilities is who's on point to give us information on the condition and make recommendations on what needs to be done in order to maintain those parking structures. So if they say, hey, you know, we need to replace the glass, and I'm saying, hey, I want it to be more than just the glass, I don't know how that will go because me, and I'm not the facilities people, but I want you guys to think about that because I won't always be here. And I need you to champion certain things because it's going to be of more value than it's just a parking garage. It needs to be vibrant. It needs to have different lighting. It needs to have something that makes you want to be in that zone because that's our bad zone right now. We talked about that. Starting at where the pit is and Liberty Plaza and no offense, Salem Center and Penny's. That's what we need to be focusing on. And that's why when you look at the grant amounts that I have in here, we've always promised ourselves. So we would keep money in there in case somebody had something that they wanted to do. If the pit was going to move forward, we wanted to have money there to help move the pit, to help move Pennies, to help move any Liberty Plaza. So again, you're going to see this constant, there's just constant things you're going to see every year because that's kind of what we've always agreed we wanted to be there when somebody needed the money to move these things forward. So again, there's a consistent pattern we want to keep streetscape going because that would benefit to everyone. Everybody that walks the sidewalk, every property owner, every business, every guest, everybody reaps a benefit. It's not a one-off. So you're gonna see that in here every year. You're gonna see a high level of funding for the grant program in case somebody wants to do something. We want to be able to be there and incentivize them moving that forward. So what's the message on Marion? It needs to do something other than what it is.
Has there ever been a study done for what could happen there? I mean, I know we can pay for structural analysis studies, but is there an economic development study looking at the opportunities of the area that?
There was, somebody wanted to do housing. They had
Western Oregon.
Yeah. a developer was able to secure a lease for its WU for international student housing, and they wanted to put it on top of Marion in addition to some independent housing around there. So cost benefit analysis, I think, was done as part of that. But again, I would like to continue having the ability to now take the engineer's report and see what other things might be possible with that, taking into consideration the things that we know need to be done, but not just necessarily replace one for one, but take a look at that asset a little bit differently. But again, that will require more consulting services. And again, I'm not, clearly there's issues. The engineering report says there's issues, but how much of it could get kicked? Can you kick the can down? I don't know, but I'm sure I'll be told.
Ooh,
But I will negotiate.
I want to ask a dumb question.
No dumb question, ever.
What if then we, say that's a cool, great idea, I'd like to see that, let's make one of these less, are these, what do, I know you spend a lot of time on this, but do we?
It's in my $1 million.
Well, what,
If I have,
like, we should come out with
capital, that's where we would take money to do continued analysis and hire consultants. Because this doesn't cover everything that came out. I mean, if just in the curtain wall, the cheap price is $1.5 million, the best price is $2 million. This isn't it. This is just something to continue the discussion going.
Sure.
If we had to do our architectural analysis, if there was something that had to be done right now, then we could pay to get that done, but not a huge replacement of something that we would then not want to undo. We don't want to pay for something expensive and undo it.
Right, no, I understand that one's there, I guess I'm saying this still makes it the question in general, what if we just like, hey, one of these line items, let's just make it smaller so that another one can be larger.
You can do that.
Okay.
You can totally have that conversation.
You can also go to line,
There's money at the end that's not.
line 127 there says ending fund balance and future projects. So that means that right now, there's no real plan for that 5.4 million.
Oh, and I always have a plan for that, Charles.
Now, as a matter of policy, in the budget, we always obligate everything that's available. So that means that in the course of mid-year, for instance, if there's something new, then it gives us the ability to do that by going back to council and declaring that's what we want to do with it. But you've got an opportunity there at 2 million at line 124, plus the 5.4 ending fund balance in line 127. So between the two of those, you've got a little pocket change.
Sure. So that was like a tangible thing that Kurt said, let's get a consultant like that, but a sweet party deck up top. Now that I understand a little bit more, I guess my point was, I really feel bad about this 173,000 for toolbox loan. Zero. So how's that sort of? That's my super loaded question.
That is a really good question because I would love to have it in zero. Because 173 isn't gonna do anything, and we really don't do loans anymore. I did a lot of loans here, but we don't do loans anymore. Have to
by
go,
choice or by you don't do loans anymore because you're directed not to, or because they aren't happening?
okay, that's a really good question. That's, I guess that's one of the benefits for being here, long enough. They capped how much you could give at the 749,999. So when I did loans, I was doing 1,000,003 for the very large buildings in downtown. The market changed, interest rates were better, and consensus of my board was grants would be more beneficial than a loan. And so again, if you looked historically at the budget, you're gonna see it went away, because you no longer could do a large loan. And the grants, we were able to get that up, because it was like 25,000, 50,000, and moved it to 300,000, and then we made an exception criteria. So grants was just what was preferred over loans. I think it's in there because it's not closed. It's still a program, you know, what I mean, it's, so as long as it's a program, then it's there.
Right, well, I guess I'm.
I don't know, I didn't create the program, but I can ask the director. I don't have a problem with, you have to just keep leaving the last of the balance in there that we had from the last time we funded it. It's been years since we've put the money.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned rates, you know, that 3% is real nice, or whatever it was, but it would be great to see that come back as a tool. While the grants are amazing, of course, no one wants to have to pay facts, that is always preferential. There are projects that need extra help, but might not meet the exception criteria. I think of that florist, for example. You know, it'd be tough to get one grant for that, but man, it's about helping for something like that to pencil, it's a great tool. If it's 3%, it's 7.5.
Well, I think the other piece is that, you know, probably you don't all know, I have the banking background. So when I came here, it was easy for me to do the loans, because that's what my background's in. There isn't anybody else here that can do a loan. That's not really the business that we're in. Again, in 2005, when we had 100,000 square feet of vacant space in 5 or 6 buildings, having $1 million or $1.3 million just jump-started those buildings. If we wanted to go to loan program, or if you wanted to fund the loan program, then you're gonna have, Michael would have to look at the cost associated with us hiring a consultant to underwrite, do all the loan docs and do all that stuff that I do, because it's just unique to me that we don't, that isn't something that cities usually do is loans. It's something that a financial institution would do. We don't even have, we have very few now that are even still open. So it's just not a business, just administratively, that is a good fit with the city. And again, if pushed, it would have to be paid out. We would have to pay a third party to meet with the loan committee like I did and go through that whole process. And a loan is very different than a grant. A grant, I can have Shelley do a grant. A loan, you know, there's, I don't want to say that I'm special, but a loan is very different in underwriting because the city, even though it has a low market interest rate, it doesn't take risk. We still require loan to value, we still require debt service coverage rate, we still require personal guarantees, environmental reviews. It's just a different knowledge base that it isn't something that the city has invested in here because again, they were phasing that out. So again,
So I wanted to take the initiative to phase it back in, other than now say, hey, make there more money here. Is that a step or is that the wrong, we did the wrong order?
it would be up to this board. It isn't up to me. If in fact you wanted to increase the loan program and have that be something that was marketed, then it would be up to Kristen when she sees that recommendation to decide if she agrees with that recommendation or not, because there's your recommendation and then there's the city manager's recommendation. Is that how it goes? And then, so yours is the first one and then they can agree or disagree with what you say. And then there'll that final thing. So yes, if that's what you want, then you could.
Is there, the appropriate time to get on a soapbox and talk about it?
I have one question. Is it an annual review if we increase the budget for 1 year, 2 years, or if the market the way it is right now? It could be lower back.
Well, you commit to those loans for a certain term, so you get discussed. As far as money is then. Force them to pay off.
So it'd be budgeted every year, because you're gonna hand that out, so if you do it
Yeah,
once.
yeah.
Much like we did for the EGM at Sacramento a couple of years ago. Is it possible to create a subcommittee to explore that, to put the thoughts together, kind of a brain trust to then inform the board before we engage the city manager, Christopher? I don't want to over-engineer to your point though, how do we get to fleshing out if it makes sense? I mean, or instead of arbitrarily throwing in a 0 and an extra comma, knowing the, because I do agree with you. Fundamentally, the market has completely changed. Just probably why this was here in years past when it was a different set of market situation, so. Point's well received, but to your last question, what's the next step look like? How would it go?
I don't know the last time anybody asked me about a loan. But that doesn't mean there isn't a property out there that could use a loan. It's just a matter of, if that's what you think. Typically, when I make changes to programs, grants and stuff, it's based on the meetings that I have with people that are looking to do something here. When the grant started out at 25 and it was only for the exterior facades, that wasn't what was needed as things changed. And then it was inside, outside, and then we increased it, and then we increased it again, and we broadened what you could use it for, because it used to be you could only get a grant within Riverfront. You would have never been eligible for a grant. We've now broadened it to the whole urban renewal area. So over the years, based on the changes and stuff, we have changed the grant program. And again, because the demand for the loans went down, it wasn't where the funding went, it was allocated to the grant program. I guess, if somebody came in and said they needed a loan, then this is how it's going to go, in my opinion. I have money in the grant program. I don't have money in the loan program. So it's a matter of, do we talk about, based on this request, taking money from the grant program and moving it to the loan program and having that be what you move forward for a project? You could always do that. It's just a matter of, we have a loan program. Somebody comes in and says, I need 500,000, not 173. So now it's just a matter of, do we want to go back and say, we're going to take 373 from the grant program, the loan program, so we have enough to move this out. Again, if it was me, somebody came in today, and it was something we all really, it was analytic and it made sense because interest rates changed. That's what I would do. I would turn around and I talked to Kristen and I would say, we don't have enough in the loan program. We need to take money from the grant program and move it in. And then she's going to say, are you going to do the loan? I'll say, I guess so. I guess I will underwrite another one.
Well, I pass those fees on to the borrower, just like the bank does, rather than your time, it has to.
Our fees are $500.
Yeah, so that should be changed. Change with the market as well.
I just don't know what the demand is, Charles.
Sure.
Um,
Well, it's hard to get anyone excited if there's not enough to demand. Well, it's a hard number. I think it's one of those that does I didn't even know there was a loan program. We do a ton of projects downtown. I didn't know there was a loan program. I don't.
you're not going to be able to get a loan and a grant if they under the threshold. So you just need to keep that in mind. The most you're going to be able to get is 750 between a grant and a loan. Because it's the amount of funding that governmental funding that the project's given. So you're not going to be able to get 750 and 750.
They're going to reasonable between.
It's us giving money to the same
I'm
project.
giving it though, lending. So that's where I wonder.
Again, I would have to research it, but I don't think I can give more than 749.99.
Yeah, we can't sit by each other anymore.
You can reshuffle the seating. I'm really glad you brought up a point though, because, you know, as the downtown advisory board, we're here to support businesses and developers and making downtown better. And we have tools in the toolbox that are underutilized, we need to think about how we improve those and make them available. So. And I've seen that loan sitting there in the website, and I've seen it, I've never had a client or anyone ask for it. They just deviate to the grant, but it's a completely different market than it's has been the past 10 years.
Well, and I guess that's why I picked the forest as an example. Similarly, 440 wouldn't have happened without both programs. We were still under the 750, but it wasn't a large enough project to warrant an exception to the grant. Well, that won't take off, but I truly, and I'm just saying this because it's the same, it wouldn't move forward without both of those tools, why it's called toolbox. And so to see that there's not enough to recreate that is hard for me, and I think I can say if other folks in your development, you know, a lot more than I do, they're not out there. I'd say we either scrap it or bolster it.
If I may. Again, during the course of the year, if you have money that needs to go to a specific project or line item, that can be done because we obligate everything at once at the beginning of the year. From my perspective, Cherie's skill set is unique. Like never run into it before in 20 some odd years of government service. So if you're going to contemplate doing a loan program, some time needs to be spent with how this is structured with respect to approval committees, disclosures, equity and inclusion, and general, I guess, financial, not so much the number piece of it, but the architecture of how it's going to be implemented. Because the numbers, again, if we wanted to, we could move $2 million into that, no problem, right now. Assuming the council would. But the implementation part of it seems to me to be on the weak side and specifically linked to Cherie's unique skill set. And if she doesn't come back tomorrow because she doesn't want to win the program, then
Well, it costs $15,000. One time we paid a consultant to underwrite a deal and give a presentation to the loan committee, their recommendation. That was 15 years ago. They didn't do the closing, they didn't do the title and the closing document, and it cost $15,000. I have no idea, because I have no idea today
more than
how much that. Only in that, at that moment in time, I thought. And then I'm just not gonna be here. I'm just gonna do the loans at 15,000 a pop as a consultant.
Yeah, what was the dollar amount on that loan? I mean, that they're equating. It's just not even in the market. Okay, less than that.
No. The difference was we had to pay somebody as if it was a loan officer
Yeah, I
at a
understand.
bank,
Sure.
and that's what the consultant charged.
But that's a bridge that I would easily go gap. Yeah, but I would bridge. And find where these these banks that are physically downtown and say, hey, you go to work. And then you just don't want money. Give someone to do that. I take it off your plate entirely. You have way more things to do.
But unfortunately with government, we can't just go to a bank. If we were gonna use anybody, we'd have to do an RFP, go through a solicitation process, because we can't direct business in that. I mean, yeah, there's some within walking distance of here, but you would have to put a scope of work out there, give them to bid, and if it was a bank out of Seattle, Washington, that was the low bidder, nobody that any of us knows, we would have to use the Seattle person. You know, I mean, it's just different. Some things that are easy, I mean, it's a lot easier if you're in the private sector than if you're, in government. We just have procurement and lots of.
Sounds to me like it's not an now or never decision about the money.
No.
So we could agree, okay, let's put a little group together to see if this is worth it. Say that takes 4 months. And then say, yeah, it's worth it, and we can take action to put money into there and start promoting.
We can put money in there today.
Yeah, but even
Again,
if you
that's
put
what
in
we
money,
need to
you
do.
gotta put together, you still have to do all that prep work and go out and market.
Charles, food for thought. Over the years, I've gone, I've been in business, so I've gone in several banks, when you talk about loans. And this is just, just like I said, food for thought. It's been very difficult, being person of color going into the bank and getting a loan, right? So when you have the conversation about loans and you speak of inclusion, there was a lot of exclusion there. So when you talk about grants and loans, I mean, that's just something that you wanna kind of just, toss around in your mind, and see what that looks like on all sides before, I guess, looking at further moving that back into this.
No, I appreciate it. The program already exists.
Right.
So if it's there, I was just saying, no, it's not enough to make anyone want to use it because there's not much shown there. Now I understand that it can be moved around.
It can.
That's a different story. Part of mine, maybe it was a different question. But the program, I'm not talking about changing it or making a new one. If there's one that is being used, like you say, how we use it is not up to use. But if it's going to be used in a bigger sense, then yeah, that helps be taken.
Well, Alan, to your point, and as far as moving this forward, I think a subcommittee would be, I mean, clearly this raised a lot of interest from a lot of different angles. I think a subcommittee would be really healthy. And I think even getting an opinion from, you said there was somebody that oversees the program. Or is it you? Sure.
Oversees the program?
I heard another name besides Kristen, Mike?
No, if somebody has a loan request, it would come to me and I would be the one to process it, with them. So I think it's just a matter of, it's a conversation with Kristen, because again, you'll have your recommendations and then her and the city manager, they have their recommendation. It's just a matter of the administration of it. And there are options, like Charles says, for somebody other than city to administer the program. And it's just a matter of, if that's something that we want to be in the business for. I mean, we can't do all things for all people, but again, if that's something that is going to be some high demand for, then it's a matter of taking a look and going through what we have to go through to actually be able to administer it if I wasn't here, because we don't have that skill set.
So instead of us, if we did put money into it and market the program, the other side of that is what if somebody came to you and said they would like a loan, but they do need 500,000, and you could bring that to us at that point, that time.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. I love this is like the stone. is-
No, that's why I
Oh,
said that. If somebody
Yeah.
came in tomorrow and said they need
Yeah.
500,000,
We could talk about that.
then it would be a matter of me talking with Michael and Kristen and saying, I need to do a staff report that says that we're taking 500,000 and moving it from the grant program for this loan request. I would share with you that, if it's a project, typically this loan, the board doesn't have anything to do with the process to approve a loan. Typically what you get is you get to know about a project that's going to happen, nothing about the, financials and all that is confidential. But you could know who was doing it and obviously how much they had asked for and what the project we were going to get out of it.
So you wouldn't be bringing that to us to approve.
It would not come to you, yeah, doesn't come to you for approval. It would go to the loan committee for,
So if we expanded the budget, you'd be us marketing that toolbox to businesses.
yeah, it would be something that you could share.
Which is easier said than done, as it is. Thank you, everybody. Lots of input. I won't ask you. Well, I mean, really, now I understand all of this, and true. You don't just move around because they can be changed somewhat later. I thought maybe that's my last question. Can they all, is there any that are like it's now or never? Does someone's point if it's not now or never? Are
Okay,
any?
the one that is not changeable is streetscape.
Okay.
Those that are a project that have to go into the CIP, have to be vetted with Public Works because they're on point for that. They can't move it forward if they don't have confirmation of money because, they're doing all this design work, engineering, and then they finally get something and they go out to bid. If they started design and then we pulled the plug on it, we wouldn't. So yes, there are some we cannot move because it would completely interrupt the cycle of which they need to know they have money to do it.
The 100% funded out of
Yes,
this, no. Cause it's, if they go. If they go and it's, 4 million and they bid it and it's 6. They have to come back to us, ask for 2 million more,
correct.
or figure out how to.
But the good news is that the last bid that they did, was less than what, we thought it was gonna be. But yeah, if they are short, trust me, they would come back.
I don't know if they end up in some public works part for that portion, and this is 7 cap.
You know, they would come back and ask for additional funding.
And hopefully a really quick question. Does the streetscape footprint and the downtown paid parking footprint overlap? Or would we do, if we do downtown parking later, are we opening up the same holes as we did for streetscape?
Streetscape is from the curb to the building.
Right.
Not in the street at all.
Right, but so sidewalks and meters.
So where they, again, it's not, would not be meters, it would just be a pay station. And so, again, the transportation people in conjunction with our streetscape people, those pay stations are, the locations are based on ADA and a whole bunch of other things, but they would just be put into whatever the new streetscape was. I mean, they're not gonna be in a bed. They're gonna be on the corners or in mid-block, depending on how many parking spaces are to serve. But that wouldn't be a problem at all. They do that. A good question.
All right, then, to continue. We talked about streetscapes, which we'll just hit that one briefly. That's line 122 up here, which is at $4 million for Streetscapes 5. And then we have streetscape furnishings for 500,000. And then opportunity purchases, and yes, I know I skipped one. Opportunity purchases here for 2 million, but it still leaves 5.39 million that doesn't have a home right now. And again, what we'll do with that is we will just obligate it so that during the course of the year, if necessary, we board can recommend going to council to move something into another line item. Now, the one that I skipped was projects in support of the climate action plan, and I'll defer to Sheree on that.
We started talking about this last time. If the council made a recommendation to move forward with the pay system, there would need to be money to buy the pay stations. And so the urban renewal fund would be looked at to pay for them. So the reason why this line item is in here is that if it was going to move forward, and if you had 6 months lead time and all the other costs associated with implementing it, taking signs down, putting signs up, you need to have a budget for that. So this would cover the costs to move that particular project forward.
Certainly, but it makes sense to me. Later this year, we'll be planning a fair project, which will have an app, which you can find. I'm not sure who to put a bug in here, is it you or someone else that would like to coordinate, so our app would have some interoperability, so part of the same, even if there's a separate city. It's not a.
You thought my question was.
Charles and I were at the Main Street board meeting this morning. And it doesn't matter who my audience is when we talk about paid parking. It gets down into, can we do valet? Can we have the first 30 minutes free? Right, is it gonna be, can we extend the amount of time on it? And all of those things are clearly on the list for at some point a conversation. I'm just so up here, can we just be able to
All I'm
have
trying
a
to put out there
Yes.
is, but it gets to
Yeah.
that conversation.
Sarah
That's
will
one of the
be,
topics.
yeah, Sarah Long will be on point, if this moves forward, for all things related to implementation of paid system. And I hired her, and she was part of parking in the very beginning of her career. She knows that we get all of those. And it's funny because everybody has said, well, are you gonna have an app? Can we ballot? All of those things are options that you certainly can get. I do think that, just for preparation of everybody, I do think, pay by play is a better system as far as, being able to have more options with what you can do versus put the receipt in the window. But again, this community, as you know, is very vehicular dependent. This would be a change for them, and I know just at the library where it's pay by play, people, even though there's signs when you drive in that says, you need to know your license plate. There's a backup at that pay station because nobody remembered, and then they feel bad because now they're upset, they gotta go back and get their license plate. So, but I think that that's better because even with that, I think with enforcement, you at some point might get that, you have that machine that it just drives by like the police have, and they can scan your plate versus how they have to do it with handheld equipment, but that's good to know. I will make sure that she gets that information.
So I have another question about streetscape furniture. That money, is furniture been identified or does that include conversation about trash cans?
And you know, I love your trash cans because twice a week I have to top it off because there's no liner in there. So when we did the streetscape design, we purposely designed the recommendations on benches, trash cans, planters, because we knew that we would never get the streetscape design plan through. All the review process at every public meeting, everybody was saying, I want this can, okay, so we pulled it out, but we talked as a board that we were gonna bring it back. So this year, we had money in the budget to take a look at where we put streetscape already as far as landscaping, because it has not worked. And I think I was honest with all of you, I'm not gonna continue to put streetscape and pay for plants and stuff that are gone within 90 days because of dogs, people walking where they're not supposed to walk in it. So we had money in the budget this year to engage a consultant to go out, evaluate it, determine what we should have for plans. I don't care, whatever, to keep these things nice because they're not contributing how we wanted them to. And so Shelley's on point. We have a kickoff meeting
February 6th.
Okay, February 6th, but at the same time, when we were meeting with them, it was like, could you help us with giving us some options for furnishings, the trash cans, and coordination with the bench, a bench that cannot lay on it. Different things that how cohesive you're gonna look at this. So all that's in this year's budget. But all of a sudden I panicked thinking, we don't have any money to buy what might come out of all this. And we had agreed as a board that we didn't necessarily think we needed to wait until all the streetscape was done before we started putting a better trash can and a better bench and stuff in downtown. It's just when we hit that street, if they're there, we would just remove them temporarily and put them back. So that's what that money's for. So yes, to answer your question, and just know, we're gonna be implementing locking those that we have down here pretty quick. Those that are broken and are not lockable, we'll have to remove them. And you have several around yours that the lids are off every morning. They're chipping, they're just gonna have to go. And so, but yes, we'll keep you informed, but you know, I really would like to talk to you about this. I don't think you pay into the parking district, do you? As chariots? It's on my list only in that you have only that, you know, you have so many around there, and they're always, I mean, more than any place kind of else in downtown. More parking fund budget question, but again, I'm just not sure. Now that I'm at your cans,
Our cans.
Our cans. I don't want those cans.
The consultants that you speak of, are they talking to downtown business owners? Are they gathering information from them? 'Cause I hear you keep talking about the planters. For previous meetings that I've had with downtown Salem Business Owners Main Street Association, people hate the plan. Because it was approached as if we have the plants, you're gonna have to keep up with them. That was just a hard no from people where they were saying, I don't wanna keep up with the plant, I can't keep the plant alive. So I'm wondering what these consultants, or what information are they giving you? Are they coming into restaurants? Are they coming into retails? Are they coming in to see what actual downtown business owners would like to see? Like, what information is being gathered by these consultants that we're obviously spending money on?
So do you want the other side of the story from what you've heard? Okay,
And before you
So-
answer, I want to be respectful of everybody's time already over.
Yeah.
But
I'll just be really quick. When Main Street was created, they wanted an accomplishment. They came to the city and said, we want the planters, because there wasn't any plants in them. We want to have the planters, we're gonna go to the businesses, we're gonna have them agree to take care of them because, again, they're used as garbage cans, unfortunately. And so they went through this whole thing, we put money behind replanting them and everything, and then they weren't watered. And so we went back to Main Street and said, you did the outreach to the businesses. When they went back, it was like, well, we never said we were gonna do that. So again, the planters that are out there right now would not be the planters in the future. And now I'm gonna say it again, I'm gonna go back to the parking fund budget. In a perfect world, a business would never be maintaining the planter. It would be part of that beautification, cleanliness. It would all be taken care of. It would be contracted out and we wouldn't, I mean, we just don't have that at all. I mean, what is there is just awful. Some people water them, but if they were going to be watered because they're part of the streetscape, we would have to have a budget for that. So we're going to get recommendations, but if in fact there is no way to keep it up, then we're not going to put anything out there. We can't put a planter out there if we don't have the money. It should not be on the business. It never was on the business until there was no money. But Main Street had this moment in time where they went to the businesses, because it was never the business. But they went to the businesses and said, will you adopt this? Will you water it? Will you take care of it?
I appreciate you sharing that. It does give me a little bit of different perspective from what I hear.
I know.
On the other side of it, you asked for recommendations. I know in that meeting it was recommended. You can kill a plant, but you can't mess up a banner. Or they were talking about light post or some kind of light thing that's being implemented where you can hang either a planter or something to it. So it became more of an efficiency thing where I think it's just the uniformity that we're after. It's more of the having the holiday stuff coming in. And this is just from information from the past month. When downtown was busier, we didn't have the bigger issues of the homelessness or the downtown is busy, it keeps the bad stuff away. In my opinion, for what I've seen with the lights, with more people coming into downtown, the homeless community steers away from that because you do have business owners out there that are going to defend their business we wanted nice things to come into downtown and we were able to see that during the holiday season and we've had so much to come out of that. I think it's a good starting point from what it sounds like. There's obviously coming in new and sharing all this information. But I appreciate the platforms that you share.
And the infrastructure for banners and hanging flower baskets, it's on the headlights. And that's why streetscape is so important because right now in downtown, we do not have consistency with where the lights are. So if we put banners up, it's not going to be that great look that you want, but banners and flower baskets, they all were paid for out of the parking. That's why we have
How long ago was that? You know, when
the banners and flower, the banner,
the initial flower planter,
The hanging baskets or the planters?
I guess, so.
I don't actually. I had people plant the planters 7 years ago. We haven't had any flower baskets because you have to pay for the flowers and then pay for the watering. We haven't had that.
Okay. Sure,
Yeah.
Well, we're coming back together to meet February 9th. Brian, Sarah, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys come back next time.
I have more questions.
Well, it sounds like we're gonna have an email thread going too, but thanks everybody for participating, and everyone's voice is really important. The key of the good successful committee or chair, like chairing anything, is all the voices being heard, and Sarah, like a business owner at the table, it's really refreshing to hear like direct feedback, so thank
But
you.
Josh, you can't close it until you know if there's any changes, because that's what he's bringing back on the 9th, so that you can make a recommendation.
It's draft. I was thinking we had more time to discuss next meeting, but
Let's remember, we have one meeting for the discussion, and then he comes back and changes for your approval.
I didn't say it. But pardon me.
It's okay, it's difficult because, you know, we have a whole finance system that has a timeline. You know, everybody thinks that the fiscal year starts on July the 1st, it does. But all of my work has to be input into the system by the first week in March. So basically after March, you know, from December 15th until March 10th, my life is horrible. But then after that, it's okay. So that's why you had to be pushed a little bit.
I mean, if obviously, if you don't feel comfortable today, you still need to take a look at the line items, and you still think there's line items that you want to discuss adding or removing dollars to it, or then that's what we talked about on the 9th, but you would have to find a way to get to that recommendation and get to that conclusion at that meeting. Because parking fund typically starts at the next meeting, we discussed it, and then the one after that, we would approve it. And if we needed more meetings, we could do that too, so I always teach you don't have to do anything today.
But I have so.
You don't-
Well, the only recommendation that I heard from what is in front of us right now is adding, well, reallocating $1 million to the loan.
No,
program.
I retract that.
Okay,
Now that I've been added understanding, I would to approve it as.
I was just gonna say, I would make a suggestion to give Street more money to explore other options.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one. Spending $1 million on something that is unknown and may not actually reap benefit of what it's intended to do. I feel it could be, and maybe it just comes out of that. It's improvements in study as opposed to just straight improvements. But
I'll just add that I am a direct recipient of anything that might come out of that, so.
we want to retitle that expenditure section to provide you some more comfort, or
because I mean, you know, other than just saying, well, make it around $100,000 to study something, I don't know, cost to do, you know, an economic study of what that can be.
We had 5.3 sitting out there, so if we just doubled it or added $1.5 million
That's
to
fine.
that.
Thank you again. I feel like I was on a soapbox, but I do
That's a
think
good
that
soapbox.
it's something that you guys need to keep championing.
Well,
So yeah, that's great.
it's the largest unutilized architecture. It's
17%.
17%. I mean, that's ridiculous. If it's intended to be up at 80.
It's the largest room,
What
too,
will,
has more space
Right,
than
most
any other.
spaces.
what will Ruin with that? I call it Ruin, I think that's Ruin.
120 students or something.
Yeah. that's-
Oh, 157.
Yeah. Is there an
There's
expectation?
157.
Yeah. 20, so the expectation.
Well, I'm assuming because they have like, what, 12
Yeah,
parking spaces
yeah.
on site, that they're going to be looking at that resource as a location for the residents.
You know, it's very urgent. That's.
Well, that's,
Another-
I would say that's probably the closest one to them, but they certainly could
Well, if 2022 is any indication, clearly the actual and the what's budgeted deviates. Can we just simply change the title to Marion Parking Capital Improvements and Consulting? Are we comfortable with that versus arbitrarily throwing out a very large number into the budget? Is that okay?
I'm fine with that, and I think, depending on how quickly a study comes together, if it's a mid-year thing, and we're like, hey, this study says we spend this, we can get this out of it, and we talk about reallocating at that point. Get better information.
I did.
Vote, I need a motion for that.
Well, no, you don't, not for this, next meeting.
When it comes time to approve.
Okay, sorry.
Anything else? Well, lots of stuff in an email coming, but. No, this is crunch time for the job. Yeah, I mean, this and obviously just coincides with a massive reformation of the way that we handle parking in the city, so no big deal. Thanks, everybody. We can go about our ways. We're adjourned. That is,
It's this one.
No,
It's this one.
Oh,
You gotta tell three to go pay my one.
Yeah.
Yeah.